Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really profound topic, cremation. It's ancient, it's modern, but we're looking at it through a very different lens.
Yeah, our sources aren't your typical historical texts. We're working with investigative hypnosis transcripts, exploring the subliminal experience of death and cremation is complex stuff. Plus, we're looking at the methodology itself. So our mission today is to examine these energetic claims from way back in history up to modern spiritual movements and really understand this tension between, conscious choice and collective belief.
Absolutely. And before we even dive into what the sources say, we really have to talk about the filter, how this information even gets to us. Because dealing with data from the deep consciousness,
Yeah.
it's inherently contaminated isn't quite the right word, but subject to massive distortion.
Right, the filter you mentioned. So that's all the personal baggage, the cultural ideas, the spirit belief someone holds, that all gets mixed in. Exactly. Think about trying to get, I don't know, complex financial advice from someone who only speaks another language while you're both underwater and you're wearing noise-canceling headphones.
Okay, yeah, I get the picture. Lots of interference.
Tremendous distortion. The data passes through so many layers, consciousness levels, belief systems, culture, which is why the methodology is so critical. A single session, honestly, it's almost useless on its own. Highly unreliable. Information only starts to become trustworthy when you see it corroborated across thousands of sessions. Different people, different operators, often over years. It's a really rigorous filtering process.
Thousands. Wow.
Yeah, and even then, the common data, the stuff that keeps showing up consistently, it's a tiny fraction. The sources estimate maybe 2 to 3%.
2 or 3%. So the other 97% is just noise. Trash information, as the notes sometimes call it.
Essentially, yes. For the purpose of finding reliable patterns, it's filtered out.
Okay. So for this deep dive, we are laser focused on that tiny 2-3%. The gold standard information that survived all that scrutiny, that really clarifies our goal. Pull out those core truths about choice, belief, and cremation. So let's start way back, like 100,000 years ago. The sources say cremation is that old, used by nomadic tribes.
That's right. It goes way back, tied to the mastery of fire. But the original context, it wasn't really spiritual or philosophical.
Not spiritual. So what was it then?
Purely practical, and importantly, respectful within their worldview.
Yeah.
These were nomadic groups, right? They were on the move. Sometimes they buried their dead if they stayed put for a bit. But in other situations, using fire served a specific, necessary purpose.
Which was?
Two main things, really. First, preventing animals from disturbing the body that was seen as deeply disrespectful. Second, just ensuring they didn't leave traces behind as the tribe moved on.
Ah, okay. Efficiency and respect, not about like freeing the soul with fire.
Exactly. That idea came much, much later.
So if it started practically, that brings us to the really big question. Does the fire itself, the actual burning, have any energetic effect on the subliminal self? The soul or consciousness that's just left the body?
Okay, so for the vast majority of people, the answer is no. A clear no. In most cases, the etheric body, the subliminal part, has already separated from the physical. This usually happens pretty quickly after death, minutes, maybe hours. So the mechanical process of cremation itself, it has no incidence, as the transcripts put it. The fire is acting on discarded matter, essentially.
No incidence, unless... I sense there's an exception coming.
There is, and it's this marginal exception that often gets blown out of proportion, creating fear. The process only creates an incidence, like a negative reaction, resistance for that small number whose consciousness was not okay with the choice, not in agreement.
Why wouldn't they be in agreement?
Usually it's tied to really strong personal beliefs, deep-seated stuff, like someone who firmly believes fire equals punishment or going to hell. For that consciousness, the cremation isn't just a physical event, it's perceived as a psychic attack. They feel like they're being forced into flames, and that generates immense resistance, anger, terror.
Got it. So it's not the fire itself, but the belief about the fire. That's what the consciousness reacts to. The belief creates the negative experience.
Precisely. The belief system is the key variable there.
Okay, let's shift gears then. Bring it to the modern day. Cremation rates are climbing almost everywhere. If it wasn't originally spiritual, why this huge shift towards seeing it that way now?
Yeah, that's where we need to look at the collective consciousness. There's this really widespread, growing belief. It's almost becoming a default assumption that cremation helps the soul. It facilitates liberation.
Liberation. And this connects to the idea of an égrégore.
Directly, yes.
Can you break that down for us? What exactly is an égrégore in this context?
Sure. Think of an egregore as a collective thought form. It's like an independent energy field created when a large group of people focus on the same idea or belief, especially a spiritual one. In this case, the cremation egregore is described as being similar to a massive New Age phenomenon. It's pushing this narrative very actively that fire is somehow necessary to get to a higher dimension, or to break free from the matrix, or release attachments to the body.
So it's like a shared spiritual program running in the background, influencing people's choices.
A very powerful one, yes. An energetic current pushing towards cremation for spiritual reasons.
Okay, that's already fascinating. But the sources, they take it a step further. They link this egregore to something called the interfering system. That sounds significant.
It's a huge claim, and it's something the methodology investigated very deeply. The sources consistently describe this interfering system, categorizing parts of it as extraterrestrial, some humanoid, some insectoid.
Whoa, wait. ETs and insectoids. How does hypnosis data even get there? Are these sources saying that non-human entities are actively promoting cremation?
That is what the most consistently corroborated data suggests, yes. But the mechanism isn't physical force. It's about exploiting the psychic side effects of that egregore. They leverage the dissonance, the fear that the spiritualized choice often creates.
What dissonance? What fear?
Well, it taps into that fundamental human fear of the unknown, right? Did I make the right decision for my soul? Is this really liberation? Or did I just, burn myself out of existence? Or that old religious programming about fire and punishment bubbling up.
Okay, I see. That doubt, that anxiety.
Exactly. And the interferers target that specific emotional and mental state, that dissonance. It creates a kind of shock, a momentary paralysis in the consciousness that might still be near the body.
The transcripts use the term sideration.
Sideration, like being frozen.
Yeah, a total paralyzing suspension. It's a critical window of opportunity for them.
Opportunity for what? What do they get out of it? When the consciousness is locked in that state of fear, doubt, confusion, those low-frequency emotions, the interferers can essentially recover frequencies. Right. Think of it like tuning into a radio station broadcasting pure panic and anxiety about one's eternal fate. They can tap into that and harvest that emotional energy.
Harvest energy. Wow. So they see this growing trend, fueled by the egregore, and a mass opportunity.
A new mass opportunity for interference and energy harvesting, yes. Leveraging a popular practice that carries a lot of unexamined spiritual weight.
Which leads directly to the crucial question. What happens if someone is completely at peace with the decision? If the choice is fully assumed?
Well, that changes the dynamic completely.
Okay, let's make that contrast really clear. On one hand, you have what the sources call a lucid, conscious, assumed choice. The person genuinely believed maybe in the soul's immortality, wasn't afraid of the process.
Right. When that choice is fully accepted, held without fear or doubt, the consciousness tends to leave the physical body very quickly after death. There's no emotional vulnerability, no flaw or gap for interference to exploit. The consciousness has simply detached. It's inaccessible.
Clean break.
Very clean. Now, contrast that with a non-assumed choice. Maybe the person was hesitant. Maybe they were pressured by family adhering to the egregore. Maybe they just went along with it without really resolving their own feelings.
Then what happened?
Then the consciousness is more likely to remain near the body, lingering in that state of uncertainty or dissonance. That's the vulnerability. That's where the interference can occur.
Okay. What about culture? Like in India, where cremation has been the norm for centuries. Does everyone there just automatically have an assumed choice?
That's a really important point. In cultures like India, the practice is deeply embedded. It's tied to concepts of purification, transcendence, clearing karma. But even though it's a cultural custom, the data suggests it still often functions as a conditioning rather than a truly free individual choice for every single person.
So even within that system, some individuals might still feel a lack of personal agency.
Exactly. And for those few, that lack of genuine personal choice can still generate some level of dissonance. Maybe not the intense fear driven by the New Age egregore, but a subtle resistance or unease can still be present.
And we shouldn't forget the living in all this, right? Their emotions must play a role.
A huge role. This applies whether it's cremation or burial, by the way. Often, a consciousness might linger near the body simply because it's tethered by the strong, low-frequency emotions of the living relatives and friends, intense grief, fear, sadness.
So the living environment, the mourning process itself, can actually hold the consciousness back.
It can inadvertently prolong the transition, yes. It maintains an energetic link.
That takes us right into the ceremony itself. Let's compare the energetics of a highly ritualized cremation versus one that's more mechanical or procedural. So, a traditional ceremony. Lots of people, focused attention, strong emotions, grief, maybe love, powerlessness. The sources call this a bubble in time.
Yes, or a focused field of consciousness. It's energetically dense, maintained by the attendees' shared focus and emotional output.
That sounds like it should be comforting or helpful for the deceased.
You'd think so, but the subliminal impact described is actually the opposite. This intense, focused emotional field tends to maintain the deceased's consciousness nearby. It sort of holds it there for that last goodbye.
So it makes it harder for the consciousness to fully detach and move on right away.
Exactly. While it serves a purpose for the living, that sustained energetic focus can act as a kind of temporary anchor for the deceased.
Wow. Okay, so the deep ritual, the collective grieving, can inadvertently bind them for longer.
It creates a powerful retaining frequency. Now flip that. Consider a purely mechanical cremation. Maybe no family present, no ritual, no intense grief focused right there at that moment.
What happens then, energetically?
The sources describe that environment as, frequency-wise, very empty. From the perspective of a consciousness still lingering, it might feel cold, maybe leave an acrid taste, as one transcript put it.
Sounds negative.
It might feel negative or empty to that consciousness, but paradoxically, that lack of a strong, sustained emotional field from others actually makes it easier for the conscience to fully disconnect from the physical realm. Assuming the soul itself is ready and willing to leave, the absence of that external energetic tether allows for a quicker, cleaner separation.
That's a really powerful conclusion, especially given how, death processes in some places are becoming more streamlined, less overtly ritualistic.
It ties everything together, really. What this whole investigation points to, ultimately, is that the physical method cremation versus burial is far less significant energetically than the deceased's own internal state. Their beliefs, their fears, and critically, their level of conscious acceptance and assumption of the choice. That's the key factor. That mental emotional gap or lack thereof determines the vulnerability to interference.
Okay, that is such a critical takeaway for you listening. Let's recap. The esoteric impact. It seems it's not really about the fire itself. It's about the fear of the fire, driven by beliefs and whether the choice was genuinely lucidly assumed. A conscious, fearless choice leads to a clean separation. But hesitation, conditioning, external pressure that creates the dissonance, the opening for potential manipulation.
And we absolutely have to keep hammering on that filter. Remember, this information comes through layers of potential distortion. We're dealing with that tiny percentage of corroborated data, but still need to be critical. The sources strongly suggest that a significant part of cremation's rising popularity is being subtly influenced, maybe even manipulated, under this banner of spiritual liberation.
Right.
And it leaves you with a pretty provocative thought, doesn't it? If a cultural custom or a collective belief system like this égrégore can create enough dissonance to potentially tether a consciousness, well, what other subtle, unexamined beliefs we inherit about our purpose, about the afterlife, about destiny, might be affecting the freedom and the journey of our own souls long after the physical body is gone? That's the real power of the unexamined program, maybe.